Hello, night shift trekkers. I said night shift trekkers. I don't know why I said that, but it sounds catchy. This is your fellow sleep tech Cam Baliaho, and we'll discuss about some of the settings that you might see in your titration devices. Let's talk about rise time. What is rise time? So you will see rise time in bi-level modes for the most part, whether you're using ResMed or a Philips titration system. You will see rise time when you move to bi-level or BiPAP mode. So what is rise time? Rise time is the point when the EPAP ends and it starts to go on full IPAP pressure. So remember that when you put the patient on bi-level, it creates an EPAP and an IPAP, not just CPAP. What happens then is that the CPAP becomes EPAP, and then it adds another pressure called the IPAP, or inspiratory pressure, inspiratory positive airway pressure. The IPAP is meant to add volume and add additional oxygen in a sense, because every room air volume that we take, there's a percentage of oxygen that's in the air, and you have to remember that what we breathe in room air is that 100% oxygen. That's a little too much. It's only 21%. And so when you add IPAP, you add additional volume of air, potentially adding a bit more oxygenation for the patient to absorb. Additional oxygen for the patient to absorb. Now let's go back to rise time. When the patient inhales, they don't inhale very swiftly, because you don't really breathe. That's too fast, right? What it is that when we inhale, it's a slow and gradual inhalation, right? Some are faster, some are faster than others, and some are slower than others. Now, that point from when the patient starts to inhale all the way to the end of that inhalation is called rise time. And rise time is then measured in seconds or milliseconds. And how does that really affect the patient, right? How does it affect the patient? Is it important? So for those who are like me, I'm not an RT, not a pulmonologist, so let's talk about this in layman's term. When you inhale slowly, it feels comfortable, but it's not always comfortable for everyone, right? I'll give you two examples. One, if you have somebody with COPD, they tend to inhale faster, because the way they breathe is they try to spend more time exhaling, since they don't have that ability to just push the air out of their lungs. The problem with COPD is their big muscle, the diaphragm, that's supposed to get bigger or deflate or relax, and when it relaxes, it becomes big, and then it pushes the lungs to expel out the air or the carbon dioxide, right? So that idea now is gone, because COPD, especially if they're already bad, if they are getting worse and worse, their diaphragm stops to function, okay? They typically become flattened, so they stay at the bottom. And so imagine when you're inhaling and there's nothing to help you to expel that air out. How are you going to do it, right? And so what happens is that what the COPD patients develop this technique where they use other muscles to exhale out. So when they inhale and when they exhale out, they do this pursed lip breathing to help them exhale. So they go, okay? They tend to move their shoulders, okay, to help them get the air in and then help them expel it out, okay? And so there's two types of COPD, but we're not going to get into that. Now, imagine those kinds of people where they just can't breathe passively when normal people or patients with normal lungs, they don't have to worry about that exhalation part. They just inhale. That will take some effort, but then when they exhale, they just let it go. However, again, with COPD patients, they need to have time to exhale out the carbon dioxide because they don't have the muscle that functions on its own to help them exhale out the carbon dioxide. Okay, hopefully that I got the point across. Now let's go back to rise time. Rise time for COPD is fast. So when you get the titration device out of the box, it's typically set at 0.3 seconds or 300 milliseconds. So it's fast, but it's not too fast, right? Because it can be even faster. So for instance, you can go from 300 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds, right? So it can go, or you can go, okay? So there's two different kinds of inhalation. Now for patients that are opposite of the spectrum, which are typically your morbidly obese patients, right? So these types of patients typically do not breathe the same way. They tend to drag their inhalation, right? They tend to slowly inhale, so their rise time is much slower. So basically, some of them will have a rise time or will require a rise time slower than 300 milliseconds or 0.3 seconds. Okay, so it depends on what kind of machine you have. One is at 0.3 seconds, the other one is set at 300 milliseconds. So going back to rise time, for COPD, they like a faster rise time. And for, say, obesity, hypoventilation, or Pickwickian kind of patients, look it up online what Pickwickian is. Is basically those really morbidly obese patients. Now, when they breathe, they tend to breathe slower. They tend to inhale slower. And for one, they have such a big body that it's hard to just suck in air. Most especially once they're laying down. Imagine trying to pull air into your lungs when you have this weight pressing against your body, and that will automatically push the air out. And so they're trying to inhale against this big force. So on that note, the rise time when you are titrating a patient on bilevel and the patient says to you, I can't breathe, it's hard to breathe in. And sometimes if you increase pressure, it solves it. However, this subsetting like rise time can potentially help you in making the patient feel more comfortable in inhaling that pressure. Okay, so what worked for me in the past, because this is not a medical advice, mind you, this is for educational purposes based on my experience throughout the years in the sleep lab. When you have Pickwickian type of patients or obesity hypoventilation, they tend to like slower rise time. So if you are already titrating, you increase pressure, right? You increase pressure and you're in bilevel. Let's say you're at 12/8, 12 being IPAP, 8 being EPAP, and you already do not have any apnea events, but the patient complains to you that I can't breathe right. It's hard to breathe in. But looking at the recording, and you see that, well, there's really no apneas. The issue there is the synchronization of the device to the patient's breathing pattern. So on that note, what worked for me in the past is I started to adjust the rise time. So my patient was obesity hyperventilation. They woke up and say, it's hard to breathe with this machine. So I will tell them, okay, just relax. Let me just make some adjustments, and I will check back with you in a few minutes to see if things get better. So what I do is then I start to change the rise time from 0.3 to 0.4 or 300 to 350 or 400 milliseconds. So you're basically prolonging the inhalation part or the I time, okay, or the inspiratory time of your rise time. So when you do that and allow the patient to synchronize or breathe with the machine and see if actually that helps them. Check back with them after about a minute or two. And if they don't complain, wait another 3 minutes. So wait until they get a good 5 minutes in there and check. Are you feeling better? Is this more comfortable for you? And they say, maybe a little better. So if they say something like, okay, it's a little better, that means there's an improvement. So you're getting there, when it comes to synchronization of your titration machine and to your patient's normal breathing pattern. When they say something like that, then okay, give them another shot of adjustment. Okay, so what I did for me in the past is I slowed it down even more. So from 300 to 350, then to 400. Okay, then I allow them a few more minutes, and until I finally get that go signal from them saying, okay, I feel better. I think that's more comfortable. When I get that spot, then I continue with the titration. So basically on titration, you wait for any obstructive events so that you can increase your EPAP. But then when you have some snoring or RERA RERAs now are basically hypopneas, then you need, or desaturations, then you increase your IPAP. Okay, I hope this helps. And this video already got a little long. I didn't expect it to be this long just talking about rise time. But for me, it's very important to create a bit more substance and not just tell you, well, EPAP is this, IPAP is this, rise time is this. Because every night that you go into the lab and you have a patient that is depending on you to make them feel comfortable and allow them to sleep and to address their apnea events, to change their lives, I think it requires a bit more than just to push some buttons. I think that if we all are aware of how the machine functions and what tools do these machines give us in order to help somebody, one person at a time, I think that is the best goal for all of us. We mutually benefit, not only for the patient's sake, but for ourselves also, because it will improve us with our skills in titration. On that note, if this video gave you at least one lesson that you can take and not experiment, but to try out and see if it helps you with your patients, then I'm happy. This is not a medical advice. This is sharing information from my experience to you, because we all are in this thing called sleep that we will continually learn from. Sleep is such a huge medicine, and it doesn't end in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years for us. It's a constant evolution for us. Okay, on that note, have a good shift. Bye.